Daryll O'Keefe, you're here today on the Industry Insider podcast. Always nice to have you on the air with us. Webinars, podcasts, we've done it all, interviews. So, how are you doing today, Daryll?
Well, hello, Allison, for starters, and thank you for having me. I am doing very good. I'm a very busy man these days. I've always been busy. You've known that. You've known me for some years now, and we move at a fast pace here at the Fix Network. I will tell you, the last few months has been a pace that is new to me, and I'm telling you, it's moving fast, but I'm really enjoying it. It's quite amazing.
And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. And yes, thank you for being on the air. And like I said, always a pleasure to have you. But you have a new role with Fix. Before we dive into that, or a new portion of a role, your typical duties plus more. Like you said, you're very busy. But
Yes.
before we dive into all of that, can you explain your various roles with Fix over the years and your role within the company and how you have helped them to grow to where they are today?
Yeah, of course. It was interesting as you invited me to do this podcast, and I thought back about my time with the Fix Network. It was hard to believe that I'm in my 13th year working directly for the Fix Network, but my history with Fix goes further back than that. And I worked for a major paint manufacturer for over 20 years of my life. And that's where I met Steve Leal and the Fix Auto Group in Canada to start with. And that was way back in 2004. It's quite the thing. So here we are 20 years later and still going strong together. I came to work directly for Steve, though, as the general manager of Fix Auto Canada at the time in the Ontario market. And that was as Steve Leal was really ramping up his presence within the organization. He didn't own it fully at that time, but he was the chief operating officer and partner with the founders at that time. So June 2013 through about the end, close to the end of 2018, I managed just that Fix Auto Canada business. And in 2018, we expanded. That's when Steve took on Prime Car Care, and we expanded into the glass and the mechanical aftermarket. So in about 2018, November-ish, I became the regional vice president for that larger book of business, again, managing the network in Ontario, Canada. Continued on that path, and we had great success, great growth. That was through the development of the Speedy Auto Service, really the Novus Glass sensibilities in Canada. We did that large project with the TD Auto Centers through that period of time as well. In September of 22, Steve was really looking to step away from the Canadian business a little bit and assign the presidential responsibilities to Sylvain Seguin. So Sylvain became the president of Canada. And as great as Sylvain is as a leader, and I have just the utmost respect for what he's doing, it was different when it wasn't Steve as the owner managing as the president of Canada. So Sylvain had a very, very clear idea that he needed a little bit more support so that he could do effectively as a president what he needed to do. So he assigned myself then as the senior vice president for Ontario, Atlantic, and Western Canada. And then at that time recruited Andre Cabanat to take over that senior vice president role for the Quebec business specifically. And I continued on that from September of 2022 right through till February 10th of this year when Steve came to me and he said, "Hey, I really think that the position that we're in as an organization right now, things are running from a business unit perspective very solidly." He felt that I could offer some value at a different level. And this is where I took on this role that I'm in now as the Vice President of Strategic Business Development. And that strategic piece, Allison, that's what really kind of unbound me from the constraints of the day-to-day business. We internally refer to it as the responsibility of the profit and loss statement, and really allowed the corporation to utilize my relationships, my experience, and quite frankly, the trust the corporation has in me to go out and strategically look for opportunities. And that could be, growth in the United States with the Procolor brand. That could be vendor relationships here in Canada. It just is really dependent upon the area and the need specifically. And I can tell you, North America, when you put Canada and the United States together, the coast to coast, top to bottom, there is so many different areas of differentiation that it really takes a sensible approach to figure out what the right strategic opportunities are in each of those markets.
Absolutely. So, as we can clearly hear, you have a long history with Fix Network and in the industry. You understand all of the aspects of it, especially as you mentioned, with Fix having so many folds in its own business with glass, prime car care, collision repair, and this new role. Can you explain that to our audience? I mean, your strategic development, and it's in the US for Procolor, correct?
So in the US, my current responsibility is to grow the Procolor brand in the United States. I just mentioned, I'm now available to various business units, though, to develop those partnerships, be it new vid franchisees under the Procolor brand in the United States, really starting to work with our strategic vendors and understand how we cross paths in that marketplace. So again, the key differentiator is that I get to look at the overall business without that administrative burden. It makes me nimble and able to react to these opportunities. I think a big piece of this strategy is going to be to spend a significant amount of time starting that development. Now, I'm not necessarily going door to door meeting collision owners in the United States. We have a team. We've got some great professionals working down there. We have 3 business development managers working in separate marketplaces. We have a director of business development and partnerships. That's Nikki Werner, who I'm sure you all know well. So Nikki really manages the team down there. From their perspective, I'm almost like the help button or the easy button. When they're in marketplaces and they're not sure exactly what the right direction is, what are the right aspects of the network that we can use to display value and bring value to these collision repairs in the US markets, that's where I step in and help them refine the approach, apply the sensibilities that we've been so successful with here in Canada, like since Steve and I started doing this back in 2013. So that's really what that project looks like in the United States specifically. Now in Canada, again, I'm not stepping away from Canada. I'm still highly implicated in the Ontario, Atlantic, and Western business in terms of the overall proposition. Now, we have regional vice presidents of those markets who all now directly report to Sylvan. So they manage the business. But when it comes to the growth opportunities and how we layer in what we're doing with strategic vendors, what we're doing in terms of helping the shops that operate today really take their business to a new level. And then in situations where we have a gap, if there's still a gap in coverage and we have a work provider, whether it be a fleet or an insurance company that still needs coverage, that's when we go to market and we go and say, hey, what can we do to plug that gap, fill in that opportunity, and really deliver our promise to even more people in the world in Canada.
Yeah, and as you mentioned at the beginning here, just a little bit more food on your plate now, in addition to all of the stuff that you were already working on in Canada and Ontario. So now expanding those expertise to the US. Can you explain the Procolor business model and how some of this stuff might differ strategically from Canada to the USA?
Yeah, so boy, that's a big topic. Now, I was thinking about this because we talked a little bit about what we were going to talk about here. So I'm going to start with this. Many, many years ago, consolidation started in Canada, and it started earlier than it did in the United States, and it started differently. And the Canadian reaction to it was, in the Canadian way, very much driven by partnerships and by grassroots initiatives. So the fixed auto business itself started many, many years ago in the province of Quebec, and it was a small group of shops who were really just looking for a way to be better than their competitors and to get noticed for that impact. The group started under the leadership of Jean Daryll, and they thought if we can just operate a little bit better and then invest a little bit of money to promote a name, it would make sense to them. So think about this. If you were to spend a small percentage of your revenue to promote your own individual shop, and you took that same amount, added 6 shops into this small group, and spent 6 times the money promoting one name as the group, well, that was really just the beginning of it. So that really started this networking perspective in Canada and eventually started to roll. I mean, within a very short period of time, that became 20 stores. And in a very short number of years, it became 100 stores. And we know today that I think something like 8 out of 10 repairs in Canada are done through one of the various networks that really grew out of that first bit of sensibility. Now, consolidation in the United States is very different. This is driven by, as it tends to be in a big market like that, it's driven by money, it's driven by equity funds, it's driven by different types of money funds, Allison, that have created these large MSOs. We all know them. I don't need to go through the names of the usual characters, but these are some large organizations that have large sites. What happens is in markets, they go into key markets and they quite honestly disrupt the entire ecosystem of the collision repair industry. They open large facilities, they change the dynamics in terms of the relationship with the insurers. They almost create a sense of false inflation. They pay well to do a lot of things very, very well. But what they don't do, Allison, is they don't really tend to the customer the way that an owner operator does. And that's why we've always loved the entrepreneurial spirit that is behind the franchising model. So what we're doing is we're bringing opportunities now into the US that has been under this real push for consolidation at a high level by these large MSOs that open up and really quickly change the dynamics. But imagine in the shadow of these large entities that open up in a market, there's still a bunch of family businesses that are trying to find their place. So we bring a perspective of, yes, you as the entrepreneur can still survive. You and your family can enjoy the benefits of the scale we bring. So we can bring the type of relationships with vendors, with work providers that these MSOs enjoy, but you can still enjoy that as a small entrepreneur in your marketplace.
Yeah, the family business and entrepreneurial spirit. Like I know that you guys always push and you have some very, very high performance people in Canada that I know quite well and across the world. And that family business, I think that's a really attractive part to, the fixed model and the Procolor model and just everything that you guys entail in that. So very interesting to hear you say, the difference between it's like kind of the, we're the nice Canadians and we bring this stuff in and it's bringing that sort of feeling into the US as well.
I believe that. I think that's valid. And, and when we say family, I mean, it doesn't always have to be just the immediate family. I mean, families transcend just the immediacy of a mom and a dad. And quite frankly, a family can just be the relationship that you hold. And we really, really do respect and we really value the closeness of our relationships because we listen to them like they are family members. And we are a family business. I mean, this is still a privately held company. I mean, Steve Leal owns the Fixed Network. And as a former franchisee himself, he drives the vision of what that value is. And that vision's simple. It's to support that entrepreneur as they seek to compete in a world of consolidation. And we can then offer the support and the scale of our brands, just like we were talking about.
Excellent. So, next question here, kind of jumping off of what we were just talking about. When you approach a facility and they ask you if/why they should join Procolor or the Fix family, what's your answer?
Yeah. So again, there's as many variations to that as possible. But if we're talking specifically about in the United States right now, where we're not so known, Allison, it really is about that positioning against the large MSOs that are changing the collision repair landscape in the United States. And it depends. There's markets where they're not so dominant yet, but people know that they're coming. So that it's a proactive solution to get in there and really lock down your position by learning to operate a little bit better. We bring systems to place. We know that the fixed network model, whether it be fixed auto collision or Procolor collision, we know that the operational sensibilities of doing a proper repair, we just teach shops and we help coach them. So we do proper repairs. We do them a little bit faster. We do them a little bit better and we manage them a little bit more professionally from a marketing and an overall visibility perspective. That just helps you solidify because at the end of the day, no matter what market we're in, consumers still have the choice of where they go. But there's just so many influences that are placed upon a consumer that will like to try to influence them to go from one way to another. If in your marketplace and you're not under the burden of a large MSO yet, but you can lock down your own marketplace and be that trusted repair facility, well, that's going to protect you in the future. Now, maybe it's too late for you. Maybe that's already happened and you're suffering from the erosion of your business. You've lost partnerships that you've enjoyed for many, many years, but those have now migrated over to a large organization that has national representation and has national agreements with many, many work providers. That's a bit of a different situation. We have to double down in those ones and really get serious about the business and get an implementation in place, bring shops underneath our brand. And quite frankly, this is where it's important for us to go into a marketplace really with shock and awe. So we need to pick a geographic location like we've done in California. That's where we've been focused to date. We have 41 franchisees operating under the Procolor banner in Southern California. That gives us scale. That gives us presence. If I went to Michigan and I opened up one store, I wouldn't quite have that presence yet. So as we go into new markets, we need to really make sure that we go in and have a significant presence with a regional network so that we can have that kind of presence with because there's a lot of other carriers in the US. There's some large insurers that are national, but the US market is different than Canada. There's so many regional players that we need to be able to address and offer our services to. For example, if we went into Florida, we need to have a number of shops in Florida so we can approach the regional carriers because these are the folks that really can make some short-term changes and affect the work volume that's coming to these stores in the short term. The big ones, I mean, those national powerhouses, that's like any large ship. It takes a little bit of time to turn them. It takes a little bit of time to affect change. So we do address those. We have great relationships with everybody, but it's those regional players that are really going to be a differentiator for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the key point that you just hit there is the targeted approach. Like you said, you've been focused in California to date. And when you're on a growth mission, it can be easy to just say, okay, let's go to the US, this massive country, and try to explode the business. And one shop in Michigan, one shop in Florida, one shop in Texas, one in California. Like, you're never going to get anywhere with that kind of approach. And I think that's what really 41 locations. I didn't know it was that many. I mean, that's really impressive considering it was not that long ago that you guys embarked on this mission. So I think that it's really important that our audience understands that, and that is how Fix is succeeding so well in the US.
Well, that's being strategic, not opportunistic. And I am the strategic vice president, not the opportunistic vice president.
Yeah, I don't think people will like that title much anyway. But the strategic part of it, absolutely, and it really just folds into that. So that's excellent. So we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe we can get more into the nitty gritty. But can you elaborate on how the Procolor brand differs from other brands in our industry? We talked about, the different MSOs. We just talked about the targeted approach. But when it comes down to like operationally and fixing cars, how does Procolor approach things differently?
I think that comes down to our systems approach to the business. And it does vary a little bit differently at this point between Canada and the United States because the model in Canada is we've been doing this for 30 some years. So we've built some proprietary technology at the back end that helps us to get in front of workflows. So we can glean from the operating systems and put into our own dashboards the daily operational goals of a facility. And we've been doing this in Canada for a number of years, and we just continue to get better and better at it. Imagine the basis of this being we sign service level agreements with work providers and set expectations for performance. So insurance company ABC has certain expectations, and we agree to delivering those. Now, in the world of the accountability for this, typically what happens is after all the repairs are done in a given month, a period of time goes by, a bunch of accounting is done, and then a review is done of the work that was done anywhere from 6 to 8 to 12 weeks ago. So these reports that are going to land at the desk of a collision repair operator or even our operations team, if we wait for them, are dated. And it's really too late to affect change on those. You can make different plans to try to go forward. Here's where in Canada years ago, Steve Leal had the vision to get ahead of this by having real-time reporting that gave real-time dashboards to our operators so that we would know in a given month how the performance of a given facility was progressing. Are you meeting the expectations? Does your dashboard look like you're going to close the month with the performance you need to be the collision repairer of choice in your marketplace? And it was such a game changer for us. Others have done things to try to catch up, but I don't believe anybody's at the level of granular information in such a timely fashion that our team of operationals and data scientists in Canada have gotten to. So in Canada, it's very refined. Now, in the United States, again, we have 41 shops, which is a great thing in a short period of time. But frankly, that's not enough to robustly build from the ground floor up. And systems are different there. I mean, there's different operating systems, there's different management systems. So we're piggybacking off of those in the United States. And quite frankly, it's working very, very well. They're quick, they're cloud-based, and maybe we never need to go back and build our own proprietary system there. But we're using the sensibilities of what we've always done in Canada to be timely, to be ahead of the game, and to affect change so that the deliverables are meeting the targets. They're not deliverables that are reviewed 6, 8, 12 weeks later, and then business plans adjusted accordingly. We're trying to make real-time changes to ensure that we're delivering the promise to all of our partners day by day.
I think that's very interesting, using that was going to be my next question that I dove into. There was going to be, how are you taking those experiences, using these systems in Canada and expanding it to the States? Like you said, using the expertise that you've gained to work with the way they do things and maybe even improve it. Not maybe, we know you will, but
Absolutely. That's not a maybe.
yeah. So and we kind of touched on it as well earlier, but Fix Network has a global reach. I mean, how many countries are you operating in now?
Oh my goodness. Allison, I feel like I should almost jump onto the internet right now to check because things happen so quickly around here. But
Mhm.
generally speaking, we go to market, and I'll make this statement. This company that I work for, the Fix Network, we are absolutely a leader globally in the automotive aftermarket. We've got Fix Auto Collision, we have the Fix Auto Service, we have Novus Glass, we have Procolor Collision, we have Speedy Auto Service. In the United States, we operate the Speedy Glass Network, and we also have a manufacturing arm, SRP Brands, which makes resins and products for the glass business. So Our locally owned and operated centers offer hassle-free stuff across that. This all operates in over 2,000 points of service, if you can believe that. 2,000 points of service and in over 20 countries. It certainly does position us uniquely as a leader in the global aftermarket services solution. You know how strong we are in Canada. We're quickly expanding in the US now, Europe, the Middle East. We've had a great run in Australia too, strengthened by that Novus Glass brand, but also growing strongly in the collision business with the Fix Auto brand.
And plenty of global partnerships too that, I mean, F1 for one, the F1 stake team, and lots of different endeavors there to really get the name out there and really target the customers so they know, they recognize the Fix Network logo, the Procolor logo, Novus, Speedy, everything. So you guys do an excellent job at marketing yourselves, and that's why the growth has been so exceptional, including obviously the great operations we've discussed already.
I tell you, it's and I go back to that beginning of our conversation where I told you about myself meeting Steve Leal when he was that single store operator under the Fix Auto brand back in Cambridge, Ontario, to where we're at today. I'm telling you something, the vision that that man had 20 years ago, it's not very different from the application of what we see today. He always had a global perspective. He always knew that the Canadian marketplace was going to be taken over by consolidation efforts. And he always felt that in order to really, really control our destiny, we had to think bigger than collision. We had to think in terms of the car and the customer holistically. And that meant from bumper to bumper. The collision was important, but the glass work and the mechanical work was all going to come together, especially as technology drove that sensibility. I mean, back in the day, we could do a collision repair without having to worry about recalibrations. You could do an alignment on a car without having to worry about recalibrations. You could change glass in a car without the touching of all these diagnostic systems in a car. But now, no matter what you do to a vehicle, the common factor is the technological advances around data and safety. So advanced driver assistance systems, all of those modules that are in a car, those are the commonalities. If you think about it, the investments needed to drive an effective repair are sort of diluted if you do that for three segments. So if you want to buy and invest in re-diagnostic and re-collision calibration systems, if you can use that for the whole car, it really dilutes that expense. And that's an experience, or that's a perspective, I should say, that Steve Leal has had for, I'm telling you, the better part of those 20 years I've known him.
The story of, I mean, as you touched on there, the story of how Steve's created this brand from Canada and now beyond. We have strong Canadian roots, as you mentioned, the Cambridge store, and out of Cambridge it all started. And now, as you mentioned, 2,000 operational points across the world. It's really an impressive story. And we want to know the Procolor brand, because they have strong Canadian roots, does this also extend as you continue to expand the brand? We touched on it a bit, but you're bringing the same Canadian feel sort of to everywhere across the world, including the US.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That's one I would answer with a yes and a no. So obviously the cultural sensibilities I mentioned about the family of family businesses, the flexible offerings to support the entrepreneurs needed, those are all part of the Canadian legacy. But in terms of the US market, I want people to understand we operate a US corporation as well. The Procolor falls under a specific LLC in the United States. So we're respectful of the US market and are truly offering a solution. Though born in Canada, it's uniquely tailored to these consolidation efforts that are going on and these small shop owners that are being affected in the US. Key differentiators, as I stated, are around the dominant forces presented by these money-backed MSOs. They're truly able to go in and quickly disrupt a market and change the environment that the independent entrepreneur is operating in. And I think we can assist those folks. I think there's still a world of growth for them. There are literally, I mean, Allison, if you add up all the MSOs together, I don't think there's 5,000 points of sale in the United States. There's nearly 40,000 shops in the United States. I would suggest that there is probably 10,000 stores that make sense to look to the Fix Network and the Procolor brand in the United States as an opportunity for them to continue their efforts as a family business and ride this storm.
Very interesting. Yeah, very much a yes and a no. And as you mentioned, you have business in the US. Catering to those markets is extremely important. I think that our listeners will be very interested to know that. Almost to our last questions here, but do you have any other comments on the Procolor brand that we might have missed and, Fix Network's overall reach? Any comments about that you want to tell our audience, things that you think they should know if they're considering, like you mentioned, these potential 10,000 different points if they're considering joining the family? What are your thoughts there?
You know, something, Allison, I think as a sort of a summary of my opinion, especially when you think about my expanded role. Again, the Canadian business, it's business as usual. We're just continuing to deliver on a known promise of what we do and filling in the gaps where it makes sense. We're not here in Canada to grow just because, I mean, Steve Leal has never phoned us up and said, hey, I need 25 new sites next year. We don't operate that way. What we do is we offer a service and we work with our partners to ensure that we're delivering the service where it is needed for the right reasons. And then when the need is demonstrated, that's when we go to market and we talk to existing operators to say, hey, is there a way that we can, have you service these requirements for us? And if that doesn't work, then we go to existing folks that are already in the network and say, hey, we have an opportunity for you to expand into an adjacent territory where you're not doing business today because we have a demonstrated need from one of our partners that we want to help them out with. So that's a perspective in Canada. The United States, again, I'm going to go back to this emerging trend. And I say emerging, it's been going on for a number of years, but it's really ramping up. If you were to watch the social media posts, the LinkedIn things from those big MSOs, they've all stated this year that their business plans, now that they feel that they've got the recovery from COVID, things are a little bit more stabilized for them. And we know that there's instability in the marketplace. I don't want to get into talks on trades and tariffs and all that stuff, but I know these guys are feeling that they're ready to reinvest and they're ready to start doubling down on growth. So by and large, they've all found the acquisitions for buying existing businesses, and now they're talking brownfield and greenfield entry. So that means they're going to be going in and opening sites that weren't previously collision repair centers in marketplaces. For those folks that are in the US markets that want to dig in and they want to protect their business and they want to stay viable in the new world of MSO consolidation in the United States, somebody like the Fix Network is absolutely an opportunity. And for sure, it's a conversation they should have to explore the opportunities to lock in, protect their business, and look for those growth opportunities so they can continue to be that entrepreneurial force and a family business and really deliver on the promise of taking care of customers the way that only an entrepreneur can do.
Great answer. There's a lot to think about in that. And I think that, like I said, if anyone's interested to learn more, they can all reach out to anyone at Fix. I mean, Daryll, we can put your contact information or anyone else that we think is viable to reach out in that market and learn more about the Fix network and Procolor and its expansion in the US.
Sure. I mean, as you said, we have people everywhere, Allison. I'm just one of those guys that's there to help the folks that are in the marketplace. But yeah, anybody can call me. Certainly, you know that I'm real responsive. But we've got people in other marketplaces. Call any of the regional vice presidents in Canada. Reach out to any of the business development folks in the United States. We have somebody in your marketplace to help you.
Yeah. And I think another key point, you mentioned you've been with Fix working with Steve for 20 years and then 13 years at Fix. And I think a lot of the people in the network have the same longevity that you do, and it just shows the commitment to the brand and that it's a great place to work and it's a great thing to be a part of.
We absolutely believe. We recently had the CCIF meeting in Toronto, and to meet up in person with some of the folks that even had joined just in the last 5-6 years, Allison, come up to me and they have such a pride in seeing the growth, because we had our annual picture with all of our franchisees from the local market. There was over 80 people standing on the stairs there in our red shirts, proudly displaying the fact that we're part of a network. And the pride that you felt from these young guys that had joined recently saying, man, I remember when there was only 40 of us in this picture. Now there's 80 of us. I mean, it really speaks to the excitement and the pride that people feel by seeing the success of a network that they joined. There's no inter-franchise competitiveness once you get into those situations. It's like it's like a brotherhood. It's like a sisterhood. And it really is that family feeling of being so happy that your family is succeeding.
Every year we have to get a wider and wider lens when we take that picture. It gets bigger and bigger every single year. Well, thank you so much, Daryll. Really appreciate having you on again, and lovely to chat about the new exciting things that are happening in your life, your role, and with the Procolor brand. I'm excited to see where it goes next.
Hey, keep an eye on me. I tell you, we're putting in a lot of miles.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're at the airport every single day at this point.
Pretty close.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all of our listeners as well. Check out the description below for some more information on to reach out to anyone in your market, and we'll put some contact info down there for Daryll or anyone else that we think would be beneficial. Maybe Nikki's contact to be beneficial to speak out to in the States, and then links to the regional managers in your local markets. But thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.